Episode number 51 of Making the Case. Is objectivity in the media even possible? Let's get it. Hey, what up? We back. Another episode of Making the Case. I'm your host, Dr. Jacob Isom, educator, author, speaker, entrepreneur, content creator, father. A little bit of everything. All right. Hey, welcome back. Glad you could check out another episode. We just celebrated our 50th on the last episode, so that was cool. I can't wait till we hit 100. It's gonna be live. See that I will. I'm gonna have to make real big, like 100 episodes, bro. Hey, that's a big feat. All right. But once again, we got another great episode for you today. But of course, before we get into our opening statement, we got two channel norms. One, we attack points and not people. And two, we don't do all that cussing and derogatory stuff. Because we're professional over here. All right. And you know what? I might have mentioned this in another video before, but sometimes I find it worth reviewing and going over every once in a while, because we do have new subscribers. Shout out to those people who just recently subscribed. We're going to continue to grow. But the reason why I say we attack points and not people, because one thing that I noticed, whether it's YouTube, social media, even in the political sphere with pundits and things of that nature, is there's a lot of attacking of people's character. There's a lot of attacks on people, and to me, it's hard to get things accomplished and get things done when you feel insulted or disrespected. Right? It takes away from the message and the information you're trying to deliver. So I don't want nobody to get caught up on me attacking someone. I want you to get caught up on the information, so we're gonna leave all that fluff and all that disrespect and that negativity out there. I get it. People love to see drama. People love suspense. People love when you hating on somebody or talking bad about somebody. But to me, if we gonna say we do things with integrity, which a lot of people will say they have integrity, but we know, unfortunately, that's not the case. I want somebody to look at me that has integrity when it comes to the information that I deliver. Okay. So I just feel like I had to say that. So now let's get into our opening statement. So the topic for today's show is, does objectivity exist in the media? Okay. Now we're talking about social media, we're talking about politics, we're talking about radio, we're talking about anything that is an outlet, YouTube, right? To get information out there, to disseminate information. Now, it is my position that objectivity has not been around in a very long time. All right. So nowadays, it's clear that people take sides. Now, even though you would think that that is not their job, they do. And what we have seen is now we're calling them TV personalities, radio personalities. So when you have a personalities, there's going to be flair. And what comes with that flair? A lot of time it is taking a position on a certain matter. But what we've seen is people are not only taking positions on a certain matter, which is fine, they are backing and supporting somebody on TV, on radio, etc., when their job is supposed to be to present information, presents facts, object, and be an objective person. All right. That is their job. But we're really not seeing that in the media nowadays, at least in my opinion. Okay. So, of course, what we're going to do with today's episode, I'm going to make my case that there's very little objectivity that exists in media nowadays. And that's going to be the case that I'm going to make for you today, guys. Okay. Technically, we get four different pieces of evidence, technically, to make our case. So we get two videos and then we get two articles. So without further ado, we're gonna get straight into it. All right, let's get it. All right. So for our first piece of evidence, we're going to a platform called Freedom Forum. Of course, we cover a lot of different platforms, so this is the first time that I've used it. But the title of this article is called Objectivity in Journalism, a Fair but Flawed Idea. All right. So let's get to see what they feel about objectivity. Maybe they feel the same way as I do. A common critique of news today is that journalists have an agenda. People want journalism to present facts, not opinions or biases. It's a noble wish. The First Amendment protects freedom of the press, but it does not require news outlets to be objective. That is a true statement. You're not alone if you ever read, watched, or listened to a news story and thought that's not objective journalism. Everyone has encountered journalism that isn't truly objective. That's because humans who report, edit, and produce news can't truly be objective no matter how hard they try. Which is funny that they say that, because that is a good point, that particularly when it's a video, but it's also like this with written works as well. Like, well, it gets edited, right? So in the edited process is biased because, one, you're going to keep things in there that are entertaining, right? That you think will capture people's attention. And you also is going to slant it one way or the other based on the news outlet, the branding, etc. Right? So even with that, when it comes to when things need to get edited, there's definitely no objectivity in the editing process. So that's a good point. Why is objectivity in journalism, and why is it so hard to achieve? Comedian Jerry Seinfeld hinted that objectivity in journalism is a nice but ultimately imprecise measure when he said, "It's amazing that the amount of news that happens in the world every day always just exactly fits the newspaper." That's a great point. Jerry Seinfeld is one of my favorite comedians. That's a joke, of course, but one that highlights the truth. The press does not cover everything that happens. Exactly what is considered newsworthy is the sum of many factors, including what kind of outlet it's covering. For example, the community newspaper versus political news site, the audience, and the pure gut instinct of editors and the newsroom leadership. And that's what I was just saying, right? So it depends on different factors, like what is the platform? Because every platform has an agenda, right? My platform has an agenda. I'm trying to spread information, right? I'm trying to give you the real. I'm trying to give you what's factual, what I believe that is truth based off factual information. That is my agenda, okay? And objectivity is my overall pitch, my overall agenda, all right? But every outlet has an agenda. So let's keep reading. Every news outlet across print, broadcast, and digital media decides what to cover and what not to cover, whose voices to include and whose to leave out. Even choices like how much of a source quote to include are part of a journalist's job. Decisions like these are called news judgment. Exercising news judgment means journalists must consider multiple sides and give people who don't have access to all that information a useful way to understand and interpret it. A common saying in journalism education is, if one person says it's raining, another person says it's dry, it's not your job to simply report what both say. It's your job to stick your head out the window and find out what's true. It's also a journalist's job to find out more. Double check the historical weather data, help people understand why one person says it's raining and another says it isn't. Make sure each person is talking about the same thing. Is the person who thinks it's raining standing under a broken pipe? Does the person who thinks it's dry have an umbrella? Uncover the reason and motivation driving each person's statements and beliefs. A journalist's job is to add context and analysis to information while striving for fairness and accuracy. If only that was the case for all these different outlets. And the thing that you're really seeing now is the reason why it's getting harder and harder for the media to be objective is because now you have people, particularly in the YouTube space, right? You have more people who don't have degrees, who are not trained academians, right? That is getting in front of a microphone and they just spewing. Like, the integrity of journalism doesn't matter to people that just get on social media and things like that. So you get so many unofficial news outlets, right? Like there be there is breaking news on Twitter. Like how crazy is that? Breaking news on social media. So this is just the time that we live in. So with more and more unofficial outlets, there comes less and less integrity, I believe. So let's see. How do journalists ensure their work is fair and accurate? Newsroom leader and entrepreneur David Cohn argues that journalism is a process, not a product. Many journalists agree. Thinking of journalism like a product, something that has measured ingredients, goes in the oven, and comes out the same every time. It's like thinking it's always purely objective. In cooking, variations in ingredients, oven temperature, shelf's background, even elevation can affect the final product. Apply the same thing to news reporting. Instead, consider the process a chef takes to collect the ingredients, carefully prepare them, measure something, eyeball others, and incorporate their own family method and cultural background to make it unique. That's a useful way of understanding the process of standards-based journalism. Standards-based journalism is essentially following a set of stated values and principles, not necessarily black and white rules and not legal mandates in the process of doing journalism. Remember, under the First Amendment, the government cannot mandate who is a journalist, dictate how they do their work, or punish them because their work isn't objective. That's where the professional organization and ethics codes come in. Those who distrust the news media, a significant number of people in the United States, might think journalism ethics is an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp. I like jumbo shrimp. Journalists are not required to hold a license to practice like a doctor or lawyer. The ethics codes, often created by journalism association, are voluntarily embraced and not legally enforceable under the First Amendment. Journalism associations and their ethics codes exist to help newsrooms and individual journalists think through the complexity involved in the process of journalism. Notable ethics codes from major groups don't use the term objectivity, a nod to how difficult it is to measure and achieve. Rather, these ethics codes point to guiding principles for ethical decision making. Now, that is so interesting, though, that it says that the code of ethics, which any organization should have, any profession should have, right? Really, most, if not all, businesses should have. It's standards that you should live by. But like I was saying earlier, because there are so many unofficial news outlets, right? Like people break news on YouTube, Twitter, and some are everywhere, right? Is that most people who are not attached to anything, because you got a lot of contractors, you got a lot of independents. So most people are not following a code of ethics, right? But the issue that I'm having is, and like I was explaining why I attack points and not people, is the fact that a lot of the attacking of people is covering up the information. So we're getting so personal in the news media to the point that we see literally divorces playing out live before our very eyes. And I'm not even going to say the people's name. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Because really it happens every day. Celebrities, working class people, happens every day, right? But we're starting to see this stuff play out in real time through social media and news outlets, right? And people will voice who they siding for. So the objectivity, although, and it even said that, I mean, the word objectivity is nowhere in the code of ethics, which is crazy to me, is the simple fact that it's a lost art, right? Just simply covering the facts is a lost art. And really, that's all the article I actually wanted to read for you guys, because I do think it's a pretty fair argument, and it gave some great points. But no, I just think that we live in a time of sensationalism where, people are going to do things for the story in order to generate buzz, which generates money. So it's not about ethics. Now, your more popular and well-to-do established, maybe they have a little bit more care, but at the end of the day, what's going to drive ratings? And we know drama sells, just like sex. All right. So let's move on to our second piece of evidence. And we're going to kind of go back and forth. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Had a problem with Byron after Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich comes up with a game plan. And here's a guy that was not in the meeting when they came up with it, come in with his red pen scratching out stuff.
Yep.
Now Tom Brady is not up, because most coaches and NFL coaches work between 80 and 100 hours in a 5-6 day week. So Tom Brady the night before, he's making tweets when he didn't stay up those 80 to 100 hours. So shouldn't they have a problem with that?
Who do you think watches more tape, Tom Brady or all the coaches?
All the coaches.
Stop it.
All the coaches.
Stop
Skip, I'm not going to let you do it.
No,
I'm not going to let you do it.
I'm going to do
I
it
don't care.
because I just
I'm
did
not
it.
going to let you be disrespectful to these damn coaches because you love Tom Brady.
Nobody,
Tom Brady does not watch more tape than
quarterback
coaches. He does not.
History of this league.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a flat-out lie.
That's a flat-out lie that you're perpetrating. There's never been anything, because you can't stand it that Tom Brady at 45 is still playing this game at a very high level. Yeah.
Do you see these numbers?
Yeah.
These numbers say Tom Brady is not playing at a high level.
I need you.
No,
okay, you're in the Hall of Fame because you're scared to death of him because he's haunted you. Time out. Ladies and gentlemen at home, I would like to announce the fact, if you're new to our show, that this man for 6 straight years on this show that we have been partners at this debate desk has tried to send Tom Brady home, said he's washed up, his arm is in decline, and he should just go on home. It started the first day of this show in September of 2016, and he has been wrong for 6 straight years, and he's going to be wrong again. I'm standing by what I say.
How convinced are you Tom Brady's going to win the Super Bowl?
Okay, I picked him to win it. I'm not backing off.
Well, put something on it.
Well, what do you mean put? I put my pride on it. I put my pride.
That's what I would do.
Who did you pick? You picked the Rams and the Chargers, okay?
And the only difference is, everybody knows the Rams are bad, but they don't want to say Tom Brady is playing just as bad as Matt Stafford. Skip, they're in the terrible division. They're in the worst division in football.
Good. Are they going to be in the playoffs? Help me out.
Skip,
I need you to
That's your argument.
Okay,
that's your argument.
What do you mean that's my argument?
Your argument is that they're going to be in the playoffs. Is Tom Brady playing bad? Yes or no?
Yes, he played poorly yesterday.
What do you mean yesterday?
Okay,
all year.
But you're giving him 100% of the blame?
Because
that's just, you have no objectivity. It's just straight Brady hate. Wait a minute. This is just straight hate by a guy who's jealous that he is still playing at a high level at 45 when you had to stop at 35.
That's what you do.
That's the point.
That's what you do. Every time I call something into question, I'm jealous.
No.
Skip, I did what I did.
I never said you were jealous of Baker Mayfield.
Skip, I did what I did. You make it seem like I was a bum. I'm in the effing Hall of Fame.
Okay,
I got 3 Super Bowls.
So what?
So what?
He's way better than you were.
I'm better than you.
Better.
Skip, I got to see what you do. You take personal shots.
No, I don't take personal shots. You started it.
Time out. You would take a personal shot at me.
I didn't take a personal shot at you.
Wait a minute.
What are you talking about?
You would take a personal
shot. Put your glasses back on.
Can I finish? You're willing to take a personal shot at me to say this man is better than me because I say he's playing bad this year?
Well, because you just
go ahead.
You disrespect him. It's just so.
All right, so that was my second piece of evidence, and for those of you that follow sports, this is probably one of the more epic rants and most heated arguments. Probably definitely top 3, top 5 in all sports history. All right. But there's a reason why I want to show you that clip. It's because it makes my point exactly. Now, what you notice in that clip between 2 gentlemen. Now, if they would have just stayed on topic, nothing was wrong with the question that was being asked, right? But if they would have stayed objective, because the problem with sports is that a lot of people are fans of people and teams that they're covering. So it makes it very difficult for them to be objective. So here you saw a situation where Skip Bayless was such a Tom Brady fan that he let his emotions get to him, which got Shannon Sharp into his emotions, which the conversation then spiraled out of control. This argument would not happen if they was objective, if they were just telling it like it is, because it was some truth being said by Shannon Sharp about how Tom Brady was playing at that time. But Skip Bayless couldn't take it. So then he started throwing personal shots. You see where once things get personal, how you're no longer listening from an objective lens. Now you're in defensive mode. So sports is a huge area where like the objectivity is getting worse and worse. Even though you will really see some sports pundits talk about teams from a very objective nature, and it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the video I just showed you, and I can show you many more clips of where people are clearly for a team, for a certain player, and it just totally disrupt the whole argument or conversation because it's like, okay, are we actually talking about the integrity of the sport that's going on, or are we talking about how biased you are right now? All right. And we can see biases are not going anywhere, right? I get it. But I feel like, particularly on networks like Fox and ESPN, they have a responsibility to be objective. Random people on the internet, things of that nature, we get that. But if you are being watched by millions day in and day out, you have a responsibility. All right. Let's get to our third piece of evidence. We're going to go back to the text. Let's do it. All right. So for my third piece of evidence, we're going to go back to the text. I have an article from Columbia Magazine. Never heard of it. First time using it, of course. But it's called Is Objectivity in Journalism Even Possible? All right. So we're going to look at another article that kind of makes the case or whether or not it's even possible to be objective when it comes to report news. I think we kind of already seen so far that people emotions and biases going to always be involved. We're human. So when it comes to particularly like when it comes to situations where you feel closely connected, like it could be a certain cause, like if you have somebody that have autism or is a cancer survivor in your family, and when those topics get brought up, then you have that personal affiliation with it, which can go one way or the other. So it's a tough sell. So let's get into this and see what this article is going to be addressing. That journalists should strive for impartiality when reporting the news is an article of faith in America. Objectivity has long been seen as a gold standard in journalistic integrity, but if the demise of SEC's fairness doctrine in 1987 eroded that ideal, more recent social currents have all but toppled it. The threat of authoritarianism and the growing influence of journalists from marginalized backgrounds have been given fresh kindly to one of the profession's hottest debates. As the new dean of Columbia Journalism School, Jelani Cobb wanted to confront the issue. And so this fall, in the first public program of his deanship, Cobb convened the Objectivity Wars, a hard-hitting panel discussion in Pulitzer Hall, moderated by Kyle Pope, editor and publisher of the Columbia Journalism Review. A critical tone was set at Wesley Laurie, who won a Pulitzer in 2019 at age 25 as part of a Washington Post team reporting on police shootings, reminding the room that the act of journalism, no matter how much we may fetishize the idea of objectivity, requires a series, a pyramid of subjective decision-making. Before I read on, that is pretty impressive to win a Pulitzer at 25 years old. Just saying. All right. For Lowry, those decisions, what stories to run, what resources to invest, who to quote, are limited by the people who will make the decision and the interests they serve. And in the history of American journalism, he said, those decisions have been made almost exclusively by the upper class white men, which is a great point. And I also like to make the point, which I was going to make earlier on social media, is the fact that we often say how we distrust the government, how we distrust white people. Well, those same people that you may distrust also wrote the books in the Bible. Now, we can argue over the genesis of like where did they get the inspiration or where did they get the written material behind the Bible, but we do know that those books were written by men. Outside the ones that we say that we know that were written by women, we're not sure if they were authored by women. It's a lot of things that we don't know, right? But what we do know that the powerful have always ran things. Okay? So that's a great point. Laurie recalled that in 2019, President Donald Trump tweeted that 4 congresswomen of color should go back to the crime-infested countries from which they came. We said Lowry, by all objective fact, is a nativist attack, and nativism is a form of racism. I wouldn't call it a form of racism. I would just call it nativism, right? The thing he did was racist. Yeah, that one was a racist statement. And yet, most of our news organizations refuse to describe it as such. Here we are, the bulwarks of our democracy, the fourth estate, too scared to look at the sky and say that it's blue. Worker historian David Greenberg noted that objectivity was never the bedrock of early American newspapers, which for the most part of the 19th century were aligned with political parties, thus names like the Springfield Republican and the St. Louis Globe Democrat. But he explained the rise of professionalization and the application of the scientific methods to studying the social world seeped into journalism. So that when Adolph Ochs bought the New York Times in 1896, he promised to give the news impartiality without fear of favor. While acknowledging the pitfalls of both sidesism, giving equal weight to the imposing argument regardless of its soundness, Greenberg defended the pursuit of objectivity as an attempt to identify our own biases and correct for them so that they don't inflect the conveyance of the news. He argued that aspirational journalistic objectivity was an essential baseline in the news ecosystem swimming with opinion, advocacy, and partisanship. And I remember watching Hardly Initiated. Shout out to those brothers. But I will say they usually try to be objective. And I don't know, I'm not sure what their background is, because you could tell they have a lot of professionalism as far as they set and things of that nature, and structure, right? But they had a pretty balanced conversation on like the historicity of Christianity. I don't know if you guys go check that out on Hardly Initiated and subscribe to them brothers. They doing some good things over there. But I can also tell when it came to the captions, when they released the video, it was very biased and one-sided for the Christian side, because I'm assuming those brothers are Christians. All right. So it was still the bias was still being shown, even though they had Christians and non-Christians having a debate. All right. So it happens all the time. What I'm saying is we just need to see more of a balanced picture. I'm not saying you can get rid of people bias, people going for a person or a group or organization. I'm just saying we got to be more conscious and more aware of it. All right. North Carolina-based journalist Lewis Raven Wallace had a different take before being fired in 2017 for publishing a blog post on Medium.com, which is one of my favorites, called Objectivity is Dead and I'm Okay with It. Wallace had covered the economy for public radio. But Trump's election changed everything. Wallace, who is a trans man who entered journalism from an activist background, has suppressed his moral judgments in the name of neutrality. It's pretty heroic of him. Now he attended meetings where such question arose as, if we run 2 stories on Trump Live, do we need a 3rd story about something good that he did? That's funny, actually. Lowry, who's Black, focused on how the banner of objectivity has served the status quo. There's not a single day in most cities that the local mainstream newspaper properly, fairly, accurately cover the Black community, the immigrant community, the gay community, he said. He ascribed this failure to the lack of distinction between subjective and objective journalists. It's a bunch of people telling themselves they're objective journalists and then writing their opinions into the news and doing so by deciding what stories they cover and what stories they don't cover. Objectivity, said Lyra, has always been wielded to silence people who do not fit with the politics of the people who own and operate the newspapers. And that's true. And one thing that I would say when it comes to my platform in particular, right? Like, I like to give the facts and the data, the stats, right? And then have an opinion based off that, because it's an educated opinion, right? Because it comes from something. Or even when I cover articles like this that you would think, being that it's published, and this is not always the case, is come from a reputable source, from people who did their digging, fact checking, things of that nature, right? So I always like to come at it from a very objective lens, from outside looking in versus inside looking out. All right. New Yorker writer Masha Gensen took things a step further. My argument against it said is simply that if we're going to have an ideal, then moral clarity will be a much better guiding ideal for journalism than objectivity. Writing about AIDS and the gays press in the 1980s, Jensen, who is non-binary, realized that journalism was inherently political. Absolutely, everything is, okay? And that journalistic choices created realities that would not have otherwise existed. We reported on drug trials and promising drugs, and people found out about them because they read about it. As for objectivity, Gensen said it's a style that since the beginning of the Trump presidency has served to normalize things that ought not to be normalized. Now, it's funny that she said that the Trump era kind of caused this lack of objectivity. I would say it started a little bit before that, but I do think it picked up after Trump got into office and started really talking about politics and being involved. So that is a good point. Despite political clouds overhead, and the day was not without a ray of levity. At one point, Lowry noted that the newspaper industry, until very recently, had completely excluded people of color from his leadership. And that if J School founder Joseph Pulitzer, who was published on the New York World, were to come back to life, he would hardly know what to make of the people on the panel, much less that Jelani Cobb is the dean of the school. So I thought that this article, made some good points about objectivity. The one lady said we need to be moral, said objectivity. Why can't we be both? Why shouldn't we be both? Okay, so I think it's a difficult task, but I think it's one that, like I said, if we are people who say integrity is important, being truthful is important, right? Because a lot of times I just found out these are just nice things to say to make people look a certain way. But when it comes down to people being in their homes, in their own comfort zones, which a lot of times I think a lot of these people on TV get comfortable and they start speaking how they truly feel. So a lot of this is really just, it's a cover. All right. So let's get into our last piece of evidence number 4. We're going to wrap things on up.
So again, I'm profoundly disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country, because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons.
We're all going to have to wake up tomorrow morning and work like hell to move the world to the place that we prefer it to be. And I just want to point out, just as a matter of perspective, that the lessons that our pundits take away from these results, that they will pronounce with certainty, will be wrong. And we have to remember that.
I literally could go on all day. And yet you talk to Trump voters and they'll go, he didn't say that. Wait, no, I didn't hear him. And then you say, well, here's the quote. And then they'll go, yeah, he didn't mean that.
I didn't expect it to be this resounding. And I think there are some lessons from it. I think we forget about rural America. I think the working class feels left behind. They feel like the powerful, the elite only care about them and their power. And he spoke to them. We may not have liked his words, but they turned out for him.
It's not the elite that's going to pay the price. It's people who woke up this morning with a dream and are going to bed with a nightmare. And those people didn't deserve to be respected and held and talked to. Those are the people who are going to pay the price for whatever Donald Trump decides to do.
I'm mystified in some ways. Who are we as a country? And we're starting to find out.
I think this is a big, huge part of the story that it's hard to even digest fully at this moment. But you have Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, X, who is a disinformation propagandist and now could potentially have a direct line to the Oval Office.
These Democratic leaders are simpletons. They're servants of the donor class. So they go in there like, oh, donor, give me money, please. And I made an ad. I'm Kamala Harris. I'm full of joy. Okay, well, what did that get you? And they say, oh, Jake, you're too angry. Too angry? What? You think?
All right, so that was my fourth piece of evidence. I just wanted to show you a montage of political pundits and what I took from that video. And of course, you have a lot of different news outlets that focus on politics that will be considered left leaning or right leaning. More so going Democrat, more so going Republican, right? And to me, that takes out all the objectivity, right? If you're considered as a news channel to be left leaning, to be leaning one way versus the other, like it takes a little credibility out, right? Because it's like now we know that you're cooking up stories to fit your agenda. So how am I really supposed to trust you as a news outlet and watch you as a fan, or watch you as someone who wants to get legitimate news coverage and actually believe that you're doing it with integrity, with objectivity? I mean, it's just a hard sell. And like I said, these TV personalities, right? These people who be so emotional, like a lot of these clips were about the past election, right? For people to have all these videos of political pundits crying and saying that the country is going to hell and all this, like, that's because they're supporting a person instead of being objective with the news and talking about it from a factual standpoint, because somebody can't be all bad. You rarely hear from these news outlets like the balance of both sides. Okay, this person did this when they was in office, but they also did that. Why can't we hear both sides and judge for ourselves? At least give us that much respect. So I get it. I'm making the case that there's not much objectivity. What I'm saying is that these people who make a living off of presenting information, you have a responsibility to present the facts, the data, the stats in a way where you're not trying to convince somebody of something. That's all I'm saying. Leave that up to me. Because now what I have to do is I got to go to 3-4 different places, which, to be honest with you, should be doing anyway, just to make sure that what I'm hearing from your channel is actually factual and not doctored and not biased. Because we know most outlets are. All right, man. We're going to wrap up today's show, man. Thank you. Can't thank you enough. Thank you for my new subscribers. Appreciate you. We're going to keep growing. Like I said, we're trying to get to the point where we're going live. Okay? 5 days a week. But we ain't got enough subscribers. Come on now. Let's get it. Share, comment, like, If you got any topics you want me to make a case on, send them my way. I already know my social media is going to be in the links. Going to be linked in the description. Of course, you can go pick up my latest book, The Relationship Guide, The Business Signs of Reason. We get the merch. All that stuff will be linked. As always, I'm you, you are me. Love always, love eternal, man. And remember, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. I know I was missing something. Hey, deuces. One love.